Hi, so I was scrolling through the internet and I saw this video. These cows were never sacred by Lotus Eaters. And this caught my eye because the thumbnail had something written on it, the dark side of Hinduism. And of course, you feel, okay, it's talking about the dark side. So, what are Hindus hiding from us? So there's a standard Hindu family that you see every day. What dark things they are pulling off that is sanctioned by the scriptures? That is part of Hindu religion that will totally blow your mind to be called a dark side. And it's not just something of a subconscious instinct that we all have. So you start to watch this video and you realize that this video basically follows the same anti-immigrant rhetoric. The narrative is very clear. So to show this whole genre of the videos attempt to show either of the two things. Firstly, the cultures of the population distinct from the white or the Christian culture engaging in the acts which the British or the white or the Christians find disgusting or distasteful. Or the second thing is these cultures or populations engaging in the acts, which are generally believed by almost all of the cultures to not be good. And then these two incidents are used to dehumanize the other people. And then to advocate that we don't want people in these countries, in our countries. And why it is done? Because there has to be a narrative that is to be created in these countries. These people are intrinsically harmful to the Western civilization. Now, the reason why this needs to be said is because there are a lot of people in these countries that do not believe the people coming from other countries to be intrinsically harmful. In fact, they support immigration. Some support open border immigration, some support legal immigration, some support somewhat immigration. There are only a few people who support end of all immigration, and frankly, this idea that other cultures and other populations are inferior. A line that is often the sentiment that is often echoed in the statement that not all cultures are equal. But when you watch this video, you will realize how absurd this whole narrative is, at least to what is shown in this video. So let us start watching this video and try to understand this.
Let's talk a little bit about India. But before we do, it's important to understand the roots of Western civilization, and these can't be separated from Greek thinking and Greek philosophy and the Greek conception of virtue.
You see that even this man is laughing at this idea. Why? Just think of it. One of the major tactics of people in the Western civilization or the Christians to deflect any criticisms of their civilizations is to arbitrarily pick up a point in which that thing was not there and to defend their position. So, for example, people in most parts of the world, including the whites and the Christians, now believe slavery to be bad. So, if you point out that whites practiced slavery, and Bible has slavery, it basically has sanction of slavery. It tells slaves to not revolt against their masters. And there is no place where there is a very growing discontentment in the scriptures against the concept of slavery, which calls for the immediate abolishment of it, or treats it as a very nasty, very disgusting, very deplorable thing that needs immediate punishment. Nothing of that sort is in the in the Bible. So when you point this out, the concept of slavery to the Christians or to the Western civilization, they say that now we have stopped doing that. Now we no longer have slaves, right? It was stopped by the Britishers, it was stopped by the other people in the West, which is good. Okay, granted. But now let's talk about that there are other things that are present in this current Western civilization that are bad. Take, for example, rampant adultery, cheating, lying, false accusations by women, forcing men to pay child support while making women making it legal for women to undergo abortion. There are literally tons and tons of things in the West that are in current point that are currently existing in these countries. Take the example how there is a wide variation in the way the domestic violence victims are treated based on the gender of the perpetrator or the victim. All of these things are present in the West when they boast about equality. And when you point them out, these people revert back and say, oh, but you know, the Greek virtues, they are also part of the Western civilization. Or the Christianity. Remember, the Christianity not of this current time, which they believe to be weak and effeminate, but the Christianity of that time when the Christians were killing the Protestants, Catholics were killing the Protestants, and the Protestants were killing the Catholics, or the Catholics were killing infidels in other part of the countries. or the Crusades, or all of this violent stuff, which they don't want now. So basically, you understand the tactic. You take Western civilizations has a long history in which it has undergone a lot of change, even if you don't count the immigrants. Let's take the Western civilization from 2000 BC, as it is, whatever is considered to be in the West, 2000 BC to let's say 1800s, when these countries are majoritarily white. And then you see, if you compare from this 2000 BC to 1800 AD, and you will find the Western civilization undergone major changes, like secularism is a recent phenomena. A lot of rights that a woman have now are all of the recent phenomena. So the question is asked, a very simple question. When you say that the Western culture is the best, and the Western population is the best, and their culture is superior, the culture does not have these dark sides, or their culture does not have these disgusting practices that are practiced by other people, then which specific era are you referring to? If you're referring to cleanliness, like there are a lot of criticism about Indians and Chinese being unclean, well, that you have to point out the current state of the United Kingdom, which, or let's say 5 years or 10 years back, because these Western nations are much cleaner in that aspect. But they are also very effeminate. They have a lot of laws that are purely responsible for bringing the fall, which they believe to be the fall of the Western civilization. So how can you take one thing from that, but take the virtues from the Greeks who occurred 2000 years ago and then combine them to say that Western civilization is the superior civilization, or this is actually the Western culture. So what I will do is pick some pieces from 2000 years ago, some pieces from the Christianity, some pieces from 1600s, some pieces from 1800s. I don't know whether women should have the right to vote or not. I feel that they should not have the right to vote because I believe that some of these things are causing the decline of the Western civilization. But I also state how this progressive and feminist things that are present in the West are actually there, while they are don't the Muslims and the Hindus don't have that much, which means that they are backward, they are not progressive. It's pick and choose. If you That is why this guy is referring and going back to Greeks, as if the Greeks are the cornerstone of the Western civilization. There are tons and tons of Caucasians who are not Greeks. And the Greeks, the influence of Greeks was even not even that strong. In fact, there was a Greek revivalism, which is seen in the Enlightenment movement, which, interestingly, is something that many of these people on these sides who want to save the Western civilization hate, because they believe that Enlightenment caused progressivism, which has now caused the Western civilization to be in the terrible situation it is in. So you see how it is going. It would be like that if I am a person, right, who undergoes many changes. So I was a boy earlier, then I become a man, and I engage in various professions, some by outright criminal activity, varying different things. And then I point to specific instances in my life to show that I'm a perfect person. So if someone says, hey, you don't treat poor good, and I go back, when I was a boy, I had these values that you should have. This is the core structure of me, even though I don't practice it now. Where I was about all protecting the poor, about giving the stuff to them. I am not now, but this is because of the Jews or this is because of the Illuminati. Okay, okay. So I agree, you will say. But I like you currently now also because you stand for certain values. Like, for example, you stand to be more open minded and tolerant to certain behaviors that other people don't accept. Like, for example, other people don't believe that women should remarry, but you believe women should be able to marry after their husband dies or they get divorced. It's a progressive thing. A lot of cultures don't accept that. So is current you good or the baby you was good? And they say, no, no, no. It is the sum of both. Whatever you are saying, if it is ever practiced in my entire life span of 2500 years, that is what goodness that defines me. So there's never a complete set of values that define me as in a current position in a time. But I can pick and choose from the last 2500 years ago and create a sort of salad. But of course, the salad is internally contradictory. The Greeks that talked about these virtues did not possess many of these values that Britishers now boast of. And they would never accept those values. If you called Plato or Socrates or Aristotle, you'd be appalled seeing those things that Britishers engage in, even discounting immigration, just talking about the conduct of the white people. So why are you invoking them? To show that they are the cornerstone or they are an important part of the Western ethos. This is, of course, all a scam.
Um, and the man to talk to you about that is Stelios. and he's going to be talking about that with Luca on Thursday at 6 p.m. UK time.
Now let's
So
let's just
went
fast forward.
to
So
India and
basically, the way this video works, and you can watch the video yourself, but this video is very long, and I don't want to engage you here for a very long time, and it says nothing of substance. So let's see. So it builds the anti-immigrant narrative. Interestingly, and this is one of the the funniest thing about this video. It talks about Saint Thomas the Apostle, who's believed to have come to India, and then he was appeared to have been killed there. And he has a place there where there was a place where he is believed to have been killed. Now, this is the start. This whole attempt. Why you think that he's bringing Saint Thomas the Apostle? We are talking about first century. Remember, going to any other land, a land far, far away, was indeed a very dangerous act. Remember this. And Saint Thomas the Apostle went there to convert the people, to change their culture, which is exactly the thing that these people are complaining about. So when Saint Thomas the Apostle goes there, it is good. But when these people come here to the West, that's bad. Why are you trying to change our culture? We like our fish and chips. It's so hilarious. So Saint Thomas gets killed when he went there, not with the desire to be tourist there, or to meet with people, and to interact with them, or to value them, but to spread Christianity, to change their culture, force his religion into the Indian borders as a part of the greater evangelical program. He he's the immigrant there, and his death is used as a starting point to show, interestingly, that how India is opposed to Christianity. The reason is because a lot of base of these people is Christian, and they want to appease those Christians, even though Sam Thomas's conduct itself is an anti is a conduct of an immigrant that does not respect the values of the native place. Imagine going there with the sole aim of evangelization to convert them. Probably never would have heard of India, but because Jesus said you go and evangelize the whole world, he went there. And you don't even know why he was killed exactly. Because was it just preaching or denigrating their traditions? Remember, we are talking about the point in time where there's not much religious freedom. Even the Catholics and the Protestants in the in 200 years before were killing each other for denigrating each other's symbols or beliefs. So this combines something which occurred 2000 years ago to how the Christians are now, and attempts to derive a correlation, derive a consistency which is not there. Christians actually killed infidels in earlier history, used to kill. They were very intolerant. Now they have become tolerant. So now they have become tolerant. They are mourning the other intolerants killing their apostles 2000 years ago. That they have to bring this to it as a starting point. Let's watch the video and see where it goes.
was martyred there. Apparently, he was killed because some members of the royal family converted to Christianity, and the local Hindu king didn't like that.
Mm.
But truth be told, um, afterwards, Hindu-Christian relations were not that bad. Not particularly evil, not particularly bad. But things are beginning to change. And arguably, things have been changing since the 20s with the rise of the RSS and the predecessor party to the ruling BJP. But now,
So as you see, these people want the nationalist policies and pro-Christian policies and anti-Islamic policies in the UK, but they hate when the Indians do it. This is one of the, frankly, the pinnacle of the Western behavior. So RSS is basically a Hindu organization, advocates for Hindu unity, and these people hate RSS because, of course, a majoritarian rule in certain countries would obviously impact the Christian minorities. Just like a majoritarian rule in United Kingdom would impact the minorities in UK, like the Muslims or the Hindus. And the same argument applies, right? The people in the RSS believe that the Christians and the Muslims are breaking their traditions that are changing their cultures. And the funniest thing is, it's the same argument that is made by the people in the UK, the nationalist people in the UK, that the culture and the things that are the Muslims and the Indians that are bringing in the United Kingdom are bad, and they don't want them. And the Britishers and the people in the UK realize this apparent contradiction. So instead of saying, you have your sovereignty and we have our sovereignty, see, Britain wants an isolationist program. And many people in the West say, oh, we want to be free. We don't want to engage in wars. We don't want to engage in the actions of the other countries. Just let us live. Don't push these immigrants onto us. But this is a lie. For the last 200 years, even before that, for the last 400 years, these countries have directly meddled into the affairs of the other countries. They wanted globalization when it was benefiting them. They would comment on the cultures and the practice of their countries. They would visit these countries. They would colonize these countries. The majority of the Western organizations like the UN, the WHO, or the Amnesty International, or the NGOs, or the British, or the Christian channels, or the British channels, or the US channels, they do talk about the news coming out of these countries, and they have the specific discussion panels judging the cultures of these countries. So, of course, they want to meddle into the affairs of the other countries, the Middle East, the blacks, the cultures of the blacks, the Africans, the Indians, the Chinese. They want to do that. But when it is being done to them, they suddenly become isolationist. Why are you talking about us? We are a sovereign nation. We can decide what we want. But they don't want that to have that freedom to be with them. So this conversion from globalist, being globalist to an isolationist is of course a fraudulent, and this exactly is seen in this video. Because now they want to become globalist again. They want to talk about how other countries should frame their laws. And they have the opinion on their laws. But if that is the case, then we could have opinion on the British laws. The no matter which country you are talking about. Like let's say it's the Africa. So Africa can directly talk about what is happening in the Britain. We can talk about what is happening with regards to Israel versus Gaza and how there are many Britishers who are supposing the war on Gaza. Muslims should obviously find comfort and should find this solidarity with the Muslims in the UK standing against the people who are supporting the war on Gaza. So, of course, why does that not make sense? But so you can be in UK and you are not allowed to stand for Gaza, but you are in India and you are allowed to stand for Christianity, which is an alien religion. How does that even make sense? One of them is literal war, the other is spreading of a religion through evangelization. But of course, they have an answer to that. And that answer is just look at no how they treat their sacred river. Nothing is sacred for them. The pillars of their culture actually are hypocrisy and nepotism. So basically, they want to show that the British culture is better or the Western culture is better. See, another argument, the Indian cries out in pain as you redeem. So, what is their justification to uh, meddle in the affairs of the other countries? Well, the idea is that their cultures are worse. So, of course, we can interfere in their culture, but they cannot interfere in our culture. And this whole segment now will look at the certain instances where you'll point out the Western culture is bad. But of course, there the argument becomes that, of course, we can lift something from the Greek culture 2000 years ago and show that this is the Western culture. And then we can lift out some pieces from the Enlightenment and some pieces from the Christianity. So of course, can there be a redemption of the Western people? Of course, there can be a redemption of the Western people, but they believe that they are superior race that does not need redemption because if you point out something that is wrong with them or the bad practices that exist in the Western culture right now that they also acknowledge. I mean, Sargin's whole channel was based on this idea about the bad things in the West pertaining to feminism and other things, Gamergate, etc. So when you point that out, they will say, "Oh no, this is not how the Western people are." You go back 2,000 years ago, you see how good, stoic, and masculine we were, which is hilarious. Why should we go 2,000 years back and not see the Western people as they are? Why can they take good things from the Western civilizations that are existing now and not existed 2,000 years ago, but they also want to take the good things from 2,000 years ago, which were not there, and they were good things from the 2,000 ago, which are not existing right now? How you can create this piece of puzzle to justify yourself? So let us look at these comments. So before we look at, let us go and
Now,
just
what's happening is that
look at more of this video.
you are seeing more and more in must make
Basically, certain states in the certain states in India have passed a law which says that which prevents conversion. And this conversion, this idea is that if it's a willful conversion, then that is fine. If it is not a willful conversion, then it is either coerced or there is an allurement given in order to convert, then that is bad.
a
And it
declaration
sounds sensible, right? I mean, if someone wants to convert someone else to their religion, and it is part of the secularism of the West, it should be willful. If it is in exchange for some financial gain, or if it is if it is a coercion, then of course it should be stopped. But notice they have a problem with one aspect of it, allurement. Why? Because a lot of these people who are trying to convert can target poor and vulnerable groups, and these people who are often funded by the money that is coming from the Christian patrons in the West, specifically for conversion. I mean, you can go to their sites and they'll tell you that they are engaging in these programs for evangelization. They'll use this money to change the religion of these people, and that is bad. A person must, if you're talking about the enlightenment values, a person must change a religion, not because a particular religion, with the aim of evangelization, is giving him money, but because he actually believes in the truth of it. So this law is perfectly okay. And the laws, you read the bill itself, the bill prohibits religious conversions by force, coercion, misrepresentation, undue influence, allurement, marriage, or any fraudulent means. What is the problem here? And this guy, one of these guys replies, uh, some of these terms are not defined properly. But this is totally absurd because these are almost the same terms that are used when you're defining sexual harassment, a lack of consent. So there it is good, but here it is false. I mean, look at the term allurement. You know what allurement is related to? Let's check this. There is a in most of the states, in many of the jurisdictions, there is a crime which is called solicitation of prostitution. And what is the solicitation of prostitution? Well, basically, solicitation of prostitution is giving something in return for sex. That is allurement, basically. And the funniest thing is, it happens so often in the West. I mean, if you just you can say that allurement is not easily defined. So is not solicitation. I mean, a lot of people who go on hookup dates where the man would give the date to a woman, and then they would have sex, and the idea is that the woman would get the date, and the man would have a sexual relations with them. So sexual relations, will be able to have sexual relations, and many women admit to it. Many women go on these hookups. None of this is treated as criminal, even though it is criminalized as per law. So what does solicitation means? Does it mean that if a person takes a woman on a date, feeds her with the intention that he will get sexual benefits later on in the night, or if the woman offers herself because she's being fed dinner so that she can get the dinner, how is that not soliciting prostitution? So this is an act that is so pervasive in the West because there are a lot of hookups. And of course, you will agree that these hookups exist, and a lot of these hookups are based on you provide me this and I will provide you that. So, soliciting, how is soliciting not a very loose definition? Well, the idea is, of course, it is defined by the case law. Terms are always subject to scrutiny because there cannot be any proper term easily for these things. Like, for example, coercion. What is meant by coercion? Does it mean physical coercion? I mean, force we understand, but what is coercion? As per feminists, small things can be coercion as well. So, of course, it has to be determined by the case law. The law itself or the legislation itself is not problematic, but somehow is this triggering all of these people that the Christ redemption, they don't want it. So they are saying that you cannot coerce us, these people. That is bad. So hilarious. If Jesus the Redeemer is such a Redeemer, I mean, look at this comment, then why he needs coercion and allurement? You can go there, tell the people that how, like William Lane Craig, the other apologists are doing, why Christianity makes more sense, why it is the truth, why XYZ, why it is the most moral of all, and people will normally convert. I mean, why you need to be scared of the allurement clause? It is so hilarious. Now let us. The reason is because they believe that transportation of Christianity to this culture is good, but their transportation of Hinduism to our society is bad. And that is the idea. This idea of this isolationism or globalism is bad. Of course, these countries will continue to meddle in the affairs of these other countries, but they will pretend to be isolationists for some time so that they can push their propaganda, which is that I'm a sovereign nation, you don't meddle in my affairs, and you are a sovereign nation, I won't meddle in yours. Of course, the latter part of it is not going to be followed. Similarly, my culture I can preach in your countries. I mean, this is what the colonizers did as well. But your culture you cannot preach in my countries unless, of course, there are certain restrictions that are put, and there's a critical analysis of whether your culture is bringing benefits to my people by the very said people. But the Indian people then have decided that Christianity and Islam is not bringing the benefits. And this is the reason why RSS has grown support. But these people are saying, no, no, you are not aware. It is bringing you benefits. And if you think that it is not bringing you benefits, then you are problematic, which is hilarious. It's basically a Western man speaking for all of the people in all of the world, telling them what should they believe in, what should they consider as an improvement, and what should they consider as a knockdown. It is hilarious. Now, before we move on further, let's go to the other parts of the video. We'll be a little quick.
Before the district magistrate.
So this is the Madison.
Allurement, which is a very ill-defined term.
As for the feminist, the consent. What is the consent? What is coercion? What is undue influence? All of these are very ill-defined terms. But the reason why is a problem with allurement is because he knows allurement happens. In fact, I'll show you something. So this is what Mahatma Gandhi wrote in 1937. This is how the Christ redeems people. When the missionary of another religion goes to them, he goes like a vendor of goods. He has no special spiritual merit that will distinguish him from those to whom he goes. He does, however, possess material goods, which he promises to those who will come to his fold. Remember, Indians were poor. These people donated goods to them, give them goods, and then ask them to convert to Christianity. There was no exchange of spirituality there. It was merely that the people who were weak, because they wanted these goods, they converted. Let's read another comment by him. Only the other day, a missionary descended on a famine area with money in his pocket, distributed it amongst the famine-stricken, converted them to his fold, took charge of their temple, and demolished it. This is outrageous, and this is said by Mahatma Gandhi in 1937. Now, you look at this and you think of it. Is he lying? You feel that nothing like this happened? There's another quote by a magazine. I hold that proselytizing under the cloak of humanitarian work is unhealthy to say the least. It's most resented by the people here. Religion, after all, is a deeply personal thing. It touches the heart. Why should I change my religion because a doctor who professes Christianity as his religion has cured me of some disease? Or why should a doctor expect such a change whilst I am under his influence? This is literally coercion, or you can say allurement. This is allurement and this is coercion or undue influence. And these things used to happen. This is how the Christ redeemed the people. But these people, even though they don't know how the Christians converted, so many Hindus in India say that these are the people who get actually redeemed by the Christ's power. I mean, a lot of Christians themselves don't experience Christ's power. There are a lot of leftists. There are a lot of people who are just Christians in name only. So how do they even know? The only evidence that we have of how these people is converted is coming from these people themselves. These are ancient sources. I mean, these are historical sources. Told that they tell that they used these the allurement or undue influence or coercion to convert them. And this is exactly the reason why the people in the more vulnerable or poor groups got converted first. The people who were rich or people who were in the middle class did not convert to Christianity. Now, for them, for these, the Christians respond by saying, "Oh, these people will not help the poor, but the Christians will help the poor. So the Christians are actually better." And this is exactly the reason why the poor people convert. But help, if it is done with an express aim of evangelization, is not good. Even Hitchens talked about it, who's a not a Hindu or an Indian, about how Mother Teresa used used the services she provided in order to convert people, to exhibit undue influence, in order to make more and more people Christian. Now let us go back to the video and check this very interesting comment. The rest of the world is not tolerant like the West, and we'll see the tolerance of the West. But before that, let us understand these people are literally in favor of or against anti-conversion laws, which allow for willful conversion. Now let us go and see other parts.
To actual threat of that person's
population.
So
India,
basically,
this
you see
of
this.
the Hindus and of some British liberals was that we need to preserve some of these smaller communities and some of these weird tribal and lower castes who actually saw Christianity as liberating them. And rightly so. If you know anything about the Hindu caste system, it's ridiculously rigid. It is deeply discriminatory to the extent that you have people in Microsoft or in Google complaining that they are being discriminated against by other Indians because they are of lower caste.
I heard that. Now let me ask you one simple question. Just because something is liberating and you subscribe to it, does that has nothing to do with the truth of it. So a lot of people converted to atheism because it was liberating. It liberated them from the moral norms posed by the church. A lot of people became feminists because it was liberating. Just because something is liberating does not mean that it is truth. In all of these things, what the Christians were doing exactly was is approaching the people who probably were discriminated and then saying you will be free of discrimination. So that is why you join our religion, and not because our religion is the truth. This is how the Christ redeems. It goes, it takes out the people who are in vulnerable positions in all of these areas, and then it feeds on their mind, telling them that yes, you can escape poverty, you can escape discrimination, you can escape X, Y, Z, but just convert to us, become ours, and believe in those things that have nothing to do with liberation. Whether Christ existed, was resurrected, has nothing to do with the fact that you feel liberated from the discrimination. I mean, it's so hilarious because this is what something they say here, but when they want to discriminate against gays or transgenders, there's something like, oh, sure, there's a discrimination in Christianity with respect to the gays or the transgenders, but that should not compel you to convert to atheism or something else because it's about the truth. If Christ actually resurrected, if he's the Son of the God, or if he is God himself, then you should believe in it, irrespective of the fact that his teachings are against the practices that you engage in, or his ideas in lead to your discrimination. Remember, gays were discriminated against by Christians for thousands of years. So, should let us understand this: can a sufficiently open religion go to these people who are discriminated in the UK or USA, and there are, and we will discuss that, and tell them that you should change your religion so that you can be free from discrimination, or you can give the poor people some money, and they'd say, yeah, you convert to Hinduism or you convert to Islam, and that is that fair? Of course, they don't believe that that would be fair. And this is exactly the reason this whole idea comes from this whole defense actually rests in this idea that Christianity is good, Hinduism is bad. So Christians can do things that Hindus cannot do. Christians can do things that the Muslims cannot do. Now, let us discuss more of it.
Court. I mean, I don't understand why the Supreme Court found conversion as a threat to national security.
Same way that a lot of Christians in the UK and the USA feel like the recent appointment of a mayor, a Muslim mayor in New York, recent success, or the success of a, let's say, let us discuss this. Is it not true that a lot of these people who suddenly turned nationalist believe that a Muslim or a Hindu taking a charge and reaching the top positions in these countries would be a threat to the culture? Of course, they do believe that. If you read this whole article, you will realize that this situation is more nuanced than what he is representing and what is in the title, just like it is in every other case. But let's skip this. If you want to read this or get their views on it, you can check the video, the timestamp.
Mainly because I don't understand Hinduism really, but that's a different story. But the reality is that this is translated into a lot more attacks.
Now, this is where the things get interesting. So he shows there were 834 attacks on Christians in India in 2024. Now, this is by whom?
On
By a
Christian.
rights group, and
So
it's
India,
not a rights group that is neutral. It is by United Christian Forum. And now this is being used by these people in the comment section to say, oh, the rest of the world is not tolerant like the West. Indians are bad. Eat the jeep. And now, okay, fine. There are parts of India that are highly Christian. They're pretty afraid of the Hindu nationalist movement. They don't believe the IR stops at Muslims. Rightly so. All of this, you have read all of this? Now, let's look at what their own people believe, that is the leftists. I'll show you some statistics. So let us look at the anti-Muslim hate at record level in UK, report says. So there was 834 there, here 6,000 reports. Now, 6,313 cases of anti-Muslim hate were recorded by Tell Mama in 2024, or 43% increase in the previous year. Now, is that just, see, if 833 cases in India, as reported by a Christian group, constitutes that all Christians are facing a lot of problem in such a big country as in India, and 6,313 cases of anti-Muslim hate being recorded in 2024, which is basically 5 to 6 times of what was told there. Now we don't know the nature of these hate crimes, and we don't know the exact nature of these 833 crimes. But Is 6,313 cases of anti-Muslim hate is actually a good stat to have? Just think of that. The majority of the in-person cases were abusive behavior, physical assault, discrimination, vandalism. Most of the attacks took place in public areas such as street parks, with the minority occurring in the workplace. Now, my question to a general question and observation is this. Just think of this like this. If we have to believe that we don't want to tolerate Muslims and Hindus because they oppress the people in their countries, right? Oppress the Christians. Why are we tolerating the Christians? Why are we tolerating the white people? I mean, all of these things are taking place in the white countries. Let us look at the religious hate crimes. Now, these are actual hate crimes that are registered in England and Wales. They increased from 8,370 to 10,484 offenses, right? Against Jewish people, to a lesser extent, Muslims. There were 3,282 religious hate crimes targeted at Jewish people, hate crimes against Muslims. Now, let us look at these statistics. So, Christians were complaining about 833 hate crimes against them. Now, let us look at this. 702 reported hate crimes against Christians, 193 against Hindus, and 216 against Sikhs. Let us calculate based on the statistics. So, let's calculate. So, 702 hate crimes for how much population? 46.2%. 46.2% population. So that comes to 15. Now let us change this, right? 193 against Hindus. How much is the population of Hindus? 1.7%. 1.7%. It's 130. It is close to 8 times. The Hindus are facing hate crimes at the rate of 8 times as against Christians. And let's calculate for Sikhs, right? Because Sikhs are very, very less. So the Sikhs faced 216 hate crimes, apparently because they are more easily identifiable because of their turban. And what is the population? It shows 0.9%. Let's type in 240. Basically, it's more than 10 times. Actually, it is around 15 times. So you just sit there and think, what is happening, right? If the Christians being persecuted is such an issue, being persecuted in India is such an issue, why Hindus and Sikhs are being persecuted in the UK is not a big issue? And the answer, of course, is our culture is better. So we can persecute you. We are actually redeeming you. The same argument they use to colonize people. But you cannot because we are better. So when we force our values onto you, you should be grateful, even though you don't want. Remember, the reason why RSS has grown powerful because people support it. But when you bring your values here, then we have a problem. Churches are closing down. Well, churches are closing down because people don't go to churches. There's nothing, but that is a problem. But what is not a problem is the incidence of hate crimes against Hindus or Sikhs or Muslims. It's hilarious.
As prevent doesn't work.
India's prevent doesn't work. Yes, unfortunately. But the police then decide that no, we're not going to register one for you. And therefore, we're not going to initiate a criminal case against the person who attacked you, which means that there is total immunity. And if there's total immunity, what are you going to get? Well, you're going to get more attacks.
Yeah.
Well, actually, there is no total immunity because the cases are registered. Now, are all the cases registered? Probably no. But are you sure that all cases about the hate crimes against the Muslims and the Hindus and the Jews were being registered, let's say 10 years before? Of course, the argument from these Muslim watch groups is that they were not being recorded, they were not being registered. Are you sure that all rape and sexual assault on men is being registered fairly? Or sexual crimes against men and boys are being registered fairly? Of course, even the Westerners themselves say that they are not being registered. Some advocacy groups.
That's
Yeah, it
sort
just
of-
emboldens it.
Yeah, exactly. Or the police will usually try to pacify the victims, saying that if you file a case, then the attackers may become more aggressive, and then your life will become more dangerous. So that's the Indian police for you. Now, if anybody knows anything about the Indian police, they're insanely corrupt.
I mean, this
Insane.
is just
I
like saying,
didn't know it.
submit.
This is the very same people who say that British police is insanely corrupt and ineffective. It's hilarious. Okay, so you got the whole chive of the video, how this video will progress. Now, let us look at the one of the most interesting comments of all these all, which is this. So just for information, there are parts of India that are highly Christian and they are pretty afraid of the Hindu nationalist movement. They don't believe that the IR stops at Muslims. Rightfully, this is exactly what is the left's criticism of Trump or British nationalists. If you want to see that, you go on these leftist channels and they say, I would not stop at X people or the Y people. They will attack the women, they will attack the transgenders, they will attack the gays, they will attack anyone. And you just think of yourself, how is that not the same type of the argument? The funniest thing about all of this is that this criticism is actually the standard liberal and progressive criticism, which is this idea that if there is intolerance, then it will spread to other things as well. This is the same argument as I told, because of which the people are protesting Trump because they believe that the rhetoric Trump is creating will not only lead to bad things for the Muslims, it will expand to Indians, it will expand to people of other groups. In fact, it will not even expand to these groups. It might even expand to those Christians or those people in the West, whites, engaging in the practices that are believed to be detrimental to the Western civilization. And I won't comment much, but you should go and see the comments by the left, white leftists, or the Christian leftists themselves. But this comment is very funny. So it is basically eat the Jeep. But before you look at the eat the Jeep, you should ask these questions. If indeed the white people don't want to live with the Indians or the Africans because these people are horrible, they don't have cleanliness, they engage in these laws, etc., then why don't take the first plane out of it? Some person suggests this also. The best thing about India is the Edward out of the place. So why? Why should we not deport all the whites and the Christians from every part of this world, like the Middle East or the China or the India, to the US, and the USA and take care of them, or the UK? This is why is that a bad thing? Why should you not eat the Christians, or why should you not eat the whites? I mean, remember, the whites are responsible for all the progressive movements that you see right now. They are the people who are literally responsible for cuckolding, a concept which was unimaginable to any person, any man. A man would be willing to go to extreme and absurd lengths to not be cuckolded. But because of the policies and the laws that the West has developed, women are granted protection and they can literally cuckold a man. They can have the child of another person and make other man raise it. Another man has very little he can do. First of all, it's very difficult for him to know. But then the laws and things are built such like that his life is screwed. He does not even know that he's raising child of the another person. Look at France and look at the statistics and the laws regarding that. So my question is, why do you want to bring in the Middle East or India or China? Why should you not eat these people who are literally who literally advocate for the laws that result in cuckolding of men? I don't know. Eat is a very small word. If the Greeks were there, they would do far worse. Probably Greeks and the Romans or the older males of the earlier generations to the whites. And one may argue because they believe in Christian virtues and the Greek virtues, in their mind, probably it would be rightful. They would be rightful in doing that. But that is a discussion for later. So we'll cover other aspects of this video later, but this is where we should stop. The premise or the summary of this video that I made was just to show this thing, that these arguments that these people pull out, these arguments are so baseless. And the reason why they are baseless is because these arguments are not based on this idea that, of course, this is the white culture and this is the other culture. And now let's have a comparison. This idea is based on this narrative that the 2000-year-old, if there's something that whites did good in the last 2500 years ago, even if it is not present now, can be taken as a sign of the white score. So, for example, we should not judge whites by feminism, even though feminism is majorly a problem in the white countries. A lot of people on the right don't like it because earlier there was no feminism in the white societies. But earlier there was no tolerance. Earlier there was a lot of violence. But of course, We should not judge whites by those standards. We should judge whites by the current standards in which white societies are pretty safe. And there's very little violence. I mean, you can convert, you can even mock Jesus and mock Christianity, and not much will happen to you. This was not 200 years ago. In the era in which there was no feminism or very little feminism. So, which of these things, two things you want, right? I mean, does it mean that then the whites will go back, like this comment was saying, that they will not stop at Muslims? And the whites will go back. Will they make blasphemy a crime? Will they start persecuting people who mock Jesus? Will they start killing people for small crimes? Very, very torturous or very cruel punishments for small crimes, which were part and parcel of the earlier generations. A lot of people would know. Even the child abuse laws were very different just 100 and 150 years ago. I mean, you go and look at the child abuse laws in the US and UK and how they've transformed. And you realize that white people were engaged in pretty despicable stuff just 100 and 150 years ago. So, what is the white score? Is the white score feminism plus good child abuse, good laws against child abuse, or is it abuse of children, but no feminism? They will never come clean. What they will do is they will take lack of feminism when they are talking to right wing people from 200 years ago, and they will mix it with the good laws against child abuse that are prevalent now. And they'll say this is the white score. This is manipulation. This is exactly what women do. And as we look more and more, we will try to point out, because this whole comment thread is justifying this unequal application of standard by arguing that Christianity and white culture is good. The other videos in this channel, some of them, would focus on the bad aspects of the West, what whites and Christians have contributed, which is wrong, which is bad, and how it has harmed people all across over the world. I mean, Hitchens said it very rightly, and Hitchens is a white person, right? He's a standard British male, but we'll not talk about it right now because the video has gone very long. But we will discuss how the things and the laws and the policies that the whites have advocated, or the conduct that they've engaged in, how they have harmed the people of the other countries, and how, whether it is good or not, whether it is moral or not, whether we can say with major confidence that Christianity and the white culture has brought havoc on the other cultures and on their own people. We'll discuss that. We'll discuss the bad traditions of these countries. In respect of this comment, this also is a very funny comment. The British banned my people's traditions. Oh no, that's terrible. What traditions did they ban? What traditions did they ban, Pradesh? Now, this comment is very hilarious because if you understand this gist of this comment literally mixes two aspects. There might be some traditions of the Indians or the Hindus that probably were not good. But the Britishers did not ban just those traditions, they banned a lot of them. When the Britishers were implementing laws, a lot of laws that that were literally uh, exploiting Indians and Hindus and their economy. There were some laws which were in accordance to the values that these Britishers had, which were good. But this comparison is as hilarious as a man who is like Hitler, right? Hitler is a good person with all these wrong things he's doing, but he was a vegan. He didn't harm animals. This is the type of the comment that it is. The British banned it conflates it justifies the Britishers banning the good traditions of the people, but citing that they also banned the bad traditions. But the job of the government obviously is to select and not ban the good ones, to encourage the good ones, or to ban the bad ones, or to restrict the bad ones. Now let us look at the British tradition. Now, when we go and when go to other videos, we look at the British traditions, the British laws, the British conduct of the society, the conduct that the Britishers or the other people in the West have engaged in over the years, and we'll see whether this conduct is good enough so that these people can be called civilized. We'll discuss about colonialism, imperialism, and the conduct that is prevalent in the West right now, which is specifically performed by the Western people, which is specifically performed by the whites. And we discuss whether it is good to have these people near you, whether we can really call white people and the Western people civilized based on broad set of values, which of course will be part of the next videos. Now let's stop here.